Okay. Hi, everyone. Um, so let me see. Well, let me try to understand where in the world you are. I can't. Based on your names, I couldn't. So my name is Sandra Gojic, and I am here to talk to you about embodied learning. I was called as an expert. I don't know what that word exactly means, but yes, I'm someone who works a lot with embodied learning, and I'm here to share a bit of the work that I do and how I use embodied learning in my work. It's very interesting. I just came from the previous group who asked me a lot about my personal stories. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm open for any questions that you might have. In case I speak really fast, please give me a sign. I live in Ireland for the last 8 years, so English is my first language now. Um, so I tend to go really fast. So feel free to slow me. Yeah, so I come from Balkan area originally, and I have been living in Ireland for the last 8 years. I have moved 4 times in my life. Don't know why is that important, but apparently it is. And yes, I've been working with embodied learning for I don't know how many years, long time, but I'm only calling it embodied learning, I suppose, in the last 2 years, which kind of shows the trend. Embodiment or embodied learning is getting a lot of attention lately, and it has a lot of definitions, that word, and a lot of understanding. And I'm kind of happy for you to have your own understanding of what embodiment is. I will share what embodied learning is as such. Is everyone hearing me? Okay. Yeah. I am, yes, to share a bit about my professional life. I am a trainer in non-formal education. I work a lot within the Erasmus Plus world. So I design and lead trainings for youth workers, other educators, teachers, you name it. Um, yes, and I use mainly embodied learning as my focus, which is, yeah, a big topic. I'm also a youth worker, so I have experience with working with young people face-to-face or one-on-one or in community groups. So I have also a lot of practical day-to-day experiences with working with vulnerable groups and building kind of resilience, not just of young people, but also of the communities. I worked a lot with the LGBT people, which still are one of the most vulnerable groups. Yeah, minority group that I know in any part of the world. I also at the moment work for the Embodiment Conference. I'm not sure if you have heard about it. It's happening in October and it's online, and it's going to be gathering over 1,000 speakers from different places, different disciplines. And this is one thing I would like you to also kind of take with you, that embodiment is not just one thing. Embodiment is a spectrum of describes or encompasses a spectrum of disciplines that can support us. So you're very welcome to join that as well. It's happening in October, it's online and it's for free during the event. So that's the work that I do. Maybe I will just roll into the introduction part and then we can have some questions open for you. So I'm quite sure that all of you have heard about embodied learning or you have heard about the word itself. And yes, I can share it later, Judith. I can share the link later to the event. There's actually one more event before the conference in October, which is all around the self-care, which is happening mid-September. Yeah, so there's a lot happening. Yeah, I somehow live embodiment at the moment. Yeah, so embodied learning. Embodied learning is kind of a not new approach, but it's a new name for the approach that has been existing in the learning world for a long time. And it's one of those approaches that look at the learning processes in a holistic way. So we understand that learning doesn't happen just on the mind level or on a cognitive level, but that it happens in this body, mind, emotion space. So in embodied learning, the emphasis is on using the body in the learning process, okay? The way we see body in embodied learning or this learning process is as a source of information, but also a source of change, okay? So it's consciously, we try to consciously include the body in this process and understand how can it support our learning. We use it mainly, not mainly, but I suppose the main focus of embodied learning is to discover different relationships, the relationships that we have between our body and different aspects of ourselves, but also the world around us and the world as a whole. So we don't just see embodied learning as like this isolated one thing. I'm learning one skill, I'm learning one thing about myself. We use embodied learning methods and tools to understand how I am, who I am, what are the relationships that I have with myself, different parts of myself, but also embodied is always relational. We try to understand how can the body support the learning and relationships we have with other people in the world as a whole. Embodiment can also be, or embodied learning could also be described as like set of disciplines, a set of skills actually, which means that embodied learning can be used in many different ways, and with that in mind also with different methods. So there's not one way to do embodiment. There's not one way to learn things, but you can use different movement practices, movement and body practices to develop skills that you wish to develop. When we say that embodiment is, or the embodied learning uses body as a source of information, what we really talk about is the awareness. So the first step in embodied learning is always the awareness part. So understanding where we are, working with what's happening, with what's alive, with what's present in the moment. So working with the aspect of who we are. And then the second part is body as a place of change, which means that we use different embodiment practices to develop who we are or develop the quality that we wish using the body, okay? And very often we say, or the people that I work in the embodied world, they say we only teach two things in embodiment. One is awareness and the second is choice, okay? So once we go through this awareness thing, we know where we are, but the choice would mean that with embodiment practices, we build new behaviors or new patterns or new ways of thinking, which means that then when we are faced with whatever challenging situation might come, we can choose how are we going to react or respond to that situation, which is actually all about building the resilience, building the vocabulary of responses. Yes, I think, yeah. So I think that's kind of where I want to kind of frame this topic or this conversation for now. And I would be very happy to answer questions that you have. But this is just like where we are, you know. So body is a source of information and body is a source of change. So developing through the body different qualities and different responses that we have to certain situations. So I would like to answer some questions that you might have and maybe bring this conversation more to a place that is relevant for you and the work that you all do. In the previous group, we had a lot of coaches and one-to-one people who work on a one-to-one basis. So yes, what questions would you have for me?
I would like to know, for me, this is not an issue that I'm comfortable with. Not comfortable. I'm not used to hear about this. So I would like, if you can, to give us a practical example of a practice that you may or may not do with your
participants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so depending on what is the topic. So with embodied learning, you never just kind of, you always have a focus. Yes, you always kind of try to work with what is the quality that you want to develop. But let's say I work a lot with the creativity or creative writing. So one of the things that I do is I work with mindfulness or body scan process. So really trying to put people in a place where they connect with their body and they're aware of every part of their body. And then I offer them prompts or creative writing tools to express what's happening in their body. So very often I would start the creative writing process with the word, with 2-3 words, my body is. So really to understand what is the relationship that you have with your body. Is it more in a positive area or more in a negative area? So really to discover the patterns. If I'm working with playfulness, if I'm working with spontaneity, I might use improvisation techniques. So again, depending on which is the quality that I want to develop, then I use the learning method that can support that. So I work a lot with the dance as a tool, as a method, because I'm a dancer as well. So yeah, anytime I want to do spontaneity, playfulness, self-expression, understanding, yeah, relaxing the body or understanding how I am in a relation to the other people, I try to use dance. If I want to tackle more social issues, I work with the forum theater. So really understanding what are the social situations, how do we respond to them, and how we can build a range of answers or yeah, range of answers to different social situations. So I don't know if it answers your question.
Yes,
Also,
thank you. Yes, yes, of
yeah.
course. Thank you.
The most simple thing is, for example, we're all aware how we're sitting now, maybe not, but I can invite you uh, to maybe, yeah, put your feet on the ground, feel your bum under, feel your, whatever it is where you're sitting. And I can invite you to close your eyes and take 3 breaths in your own time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and maybe lean a bit into the camera, see who is here. Yeah. Hello. So something is already different. Yeah, my body is a bit more softer, or I'm a bit more calmer. My voice is lower. I'm speaking slower. So it's all sometimes embodied learning is all about self-regulation and changing, so asking your body to support you in any given situation. So that's all about the resilience part as well. Thank you for the question, Rui. Any other?
I would also ask you a question. Who is the one who decides what is the quality they would like to develop? Is it the participants are coming with the direct aim that I would like to be more creative or something, or is it something that develops in a process? And how, if it's the second one, is it the same for the whole group, or how is this process directed?
Mhm. So depending the work that I do, I imagine that most of you know how the Erasmus Plus World works. Yes or no? Okay, so in Erasmus Plus World, we as trainers created topics. So I'm supposed to have one training now in November. And the 2 topics that we are working on is using embodied learning and visual tools to facilitate learning. So we're not necessarily developing qualities, but developing skills or understanding how can you use these 2 methods to work to support learners. So in most of the time, I create the topics. However, you come as you to this training, so I can offer you these things. But if it's not like a set thing that you're going to develop um, this specific skill. So I can create a learning experience from which you're going to get what you need out of that activity. So we believe that well, I also believe that in embodied learning, you're the owner of yourself, you're the owner of your body, you're the owner of your journey, and that you are also an expert of your body and your journey and your learning. And so you know what do you need to develop for yourself. I'm there to kind of challenge you or create these learning experiences where this might just become more visible to you. So this is when you work with the groups. Also, like if, for example, if I work with contact improvisation, which is what I do, I know the goal is always to develop spontaneity and playfulness and adaptability and flexibility, but I can also add another layer. Okay, today we're working with curiosity, so the focus on curiosity, but it's your own curiosity, not my understanding of curiosity. So we, in embodied learning, we respect your own definition of these things, and I'm not there to challenge you, I'm just there to support you to understand that. When you work one-on-one, I think as a coach or as a therapist, then you have this freedom to go a bit more deeper in the process and to understand everyone's story and everyone's journey. And then it's just a different format. But with the group, people usually know where they're coming within the Erasmus world, and what they're gonna kind of get within the framework. When I'm not working within the Erasmus world, I usually work with the creativity. So I try to develop creativity through the embodiment learning or embodiment processes. But again, it's your own creativity. So I allow that freedom of expression or freedom to understand what your own creativity is, and to really be okay with that. So embodiment is really understanding who you are and what do you want to develop and how can you use the body to develop that. But it's not about learning my creativity or my way of expressing or my way of being. It's, allowing yourself for your true thing to come up. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I hope it does.
Yes, thank you.
Very welcome. Anyone else? We still have 8 minutes. Is it 8 minutes, Rui?
Yeah, 8 minutes.
Are you all trainers or are you educators, or what are your areas of work?
I'm a musician mostly, but I also teach in schools, and I work in a project with children in a difficult situation, social difficult situation, and I have a sort of a percussion orchestra with little children in difficult
Right.
situations. And yeah, of course, we try to reach them through art, through music in this case, of course, yeah.
As a universal language.
I think so, yeah. And as well as dancing, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that. Ask if non-dancers, maybe they won't see it in that way. Yeah. One question that we often get is like which practices you need to choose, like what like what is the best practice for what. And if you're working with embodiment, I would say you have to explore yourself personally, a lot of them, to understand what is the best to use in which situation. Again, I work a lot with the dance and theater because that's something I find very useful for myself. I could never work with the music. I'm just like, it's not my thing. But the beautiful thing about embodiment, I believe, is like there's so many disciplines that you can explore and so many disciplines that you can learn from and then find what fits the situation. One thing that I was asked in the previous group was, something around the mental processes. You know, do we in the embodied learning ignore, or how do we respect these mental processes? And I suppose the embodied learning works as any other learning. So it's not just about creating an experience, it's also about integrating the information that emerges or comes out of that experience. And learning only happens in the debrief part, or in the discussion part, or in the talking part. So very often, I know when I go to, let's say, dancing classes or dancing events, I always miss this part of like, okay, what has happened in the last hour, you know, like what has happened with me or to me or in relation to the others, or was something challenging. So kind of, you know, so many things come up and then you're left alone. So in embodied learning, there's always this part of integrating. There's always this part of understanding what has happened, having these discussions and affirming and really voicing what did you learn, or what has emerged. So really giving that quality, mental quality to your experience. So again, we're not ignoring this mental part. We're just trying to integrate everything and work together so that our learning is more stronger then.
I have a question. So for example, when I have a group and I do exercises from the improvisation theater, and afterwards we do a reflection, how did you feel in this situation and so on, this is already called embodied learning?
It depends. Yes, it should be. Improvisation theater is actually a big part of embodied learning.
Okay, so that means that always when I choose a method where I use the body, for example, also when there are different exercises, for example, we play music and then the participants close their eyes and they guide them through the music and let the body talk and so on. And afterwards we do a reflection. This is also embodied learning.
It could be if your focus is on that, you know, if you're really using the body as a source of information, then yes, I would say it is embodied learning. You know, like for example, we can do like, I don't know, energizers, and it doesn't have to be embodied learning, you know, like because
the focus is different.
Yeah, the focus is different, or there is no like debrief or reflection. But if you're using body again as a focus of your learning process, a source of information, and then your reflection or debrief is about that experience, then yes, it is embodied learning.
Okay, and then for example, we do this reflection. The participant has several things he has in mind, like, okay, I felt that I have pressure on my breast, so probably I'm stressed, etc. And but then it's up to the participant what he does with this information for himself. It's not up to me that I okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, depending how long you work with the participant, and you know, if there is like, how do you create your trainings? But often I try not to leave participants with something that's intense. You know, I try to create an experience where they can try something new. You know, so if especially in improvisation theater, that can be very overwhelming. You know, like a lot of fears or a lot of blockages, or like, oh, people are looking at me, oh, you know, fear of being seen, but also fear of being invisible. All of that comes up. So if we wanna create healthier or more functional relationships with ourselves, then I would offer also an opportunity for them to develop a new link, you know, so try not to stay overwhelmed. Yeah, it's also, I think that's part of building the resilience, understanding that you can have different responses to the same situation. So I try to always offer a new way to looking at this situation.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, I think, well, on my clock is 10:29, so I don't know if you want to finish it there or if there's other questions.
I don't know if anyone has any other question. Are you all good? Okay.
Okay, then I will share all the links with Susanna, and she can share it with you in the group about the conference and other stuff. And yeah, I will see you actually I think I'm in the sharing circle as well later.
Okay.
Thank you,
very much.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
So I'll do the same again. I will end up this meeting and start up another one, okay? With another name. See you in a minute.
See you.